My guest today is a praised, awarded, and passionate founder, CEO, and individual. He's all about creating solutions and driving a sustainable and healthy company philosophy, and also creating a culture that puts people and health at the first place in all levels. Both his company and his leadership have been awarded, among other things, as great places to work in Europe. Torbjörn Eriksson is the CEO and co-founder of Tenant & Partners that was founded back in 1992 with a mission to performing workplaces. And in this conversation, I hope to deep dive with Torbjörn and talk about how it is to lead in the moment of global crisis that we are in now with the COVID-19, and also how he maintains his own calm, and also how he foresees the workplace, the culture, and the people, how they will transition after this crisis. And with that, a warm welcome, Torbjörn Eriksson.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. I know you are so busy, so I really appreciate you taking the time to, contribute with your wealth of knowledge. I thought what I do with all my guests, just to sort of create a space, and I know that you do a lot of mindfulness and self-leadership practices as well, so just, 30 seconds of breath. If you have any breath exercise you want to share for 30 seconds?
What I do regularly is just to actually breathe, trying to keep the in-breath as long as the out-breath. It's not so complicated, but so a little longer and the same length on the out-breath and in-breath.
Okay, so shall we do you? Do 6?
Yeah, we can do that.
Sets the tone. I thought I would dive into, first of all, because that is sort of where you are at the moment, because when this podcast or tvodcast is being launched, it's in the midst of, the world's largest crisis and pandemic. And of course this is having impacts on, individuals, but also on leaders, and of course also on companies, societies, and sort of the financial structures. And with you, you had Tenant & Partners since 1992. I know you're also managing actually 4 companies. So just to, first of all, how are you feeling amidst all of this?
Right now, pretty good. It's been a long week, and I'm looking forward to a weekend with my kids. Won't do that much work this weekend, so and the sun is shining, so I'm good.
And in Sweden, we're still allowed to actually move about, whereas the rest of the world maybe is in lockdown. But if I start out of a leadership perspective, transitioning into sort of a momentum of crisis like now, which also of course impacts your employees, not only going from offline to digital, but above all, how can we actually continue the business? What does this look like on a day-to-day basis, and what are really the challenges and the fears?
I think it's important to acknowledge that there are fears in different levels. There are general fears in the society now that affect us, either we won't like it or not, or admit it or not. So there's a base fear coming into our lives. And then we also have fears in our workplaces, because a lot of people are worried about, do I have my job left in a few weeks or month? We don't know. And right now we have almost all management teams are locked in and trying to figure out what to do now, and how to adopt and react to what's happening now. So I think now it's time for the leadership to really be stable and holding the space. And that's easy to say, but it's not so easy to do. I think when we have fears inside ourselves or in organizations, all people tend to act from one lower level than they used to be. And that's different for different leaders. But to remain at one's center of gravity rather than to fall down. I think that's the challenge for leaders right now.
And sort of knowing a bit about you and your background, I know that apart from being, an exceptional leader and also walking the talk very much with sort of health and wellness at the core as a value and also as a culture, you've also done a lot of inner work yourself, and you've gone sort of the mindfulness route and of course along with other health options. How much is this contributing to your leadership at the moment, and what tools are you actually enabling and releasing in a time like this?
First, for myself, because that's the first thing to take care of. I would say mindfulness practice or breathing practices or everything in that domain for me is essential to actually keep on going and be able to do a good work. So for me, it's more like it's breathing, it's life. So that's very important. But it's a struggle because the stress takes me sometimes also, and I do my best. But when it comes to the organization, we have since long built in this type of practices into our culture, so to say. So for years we have started all meetings with short meditations and check-ins and so on. So we have that routine, and that helps us now. Still, it's a little bit tougher when we have people at home, because doing meditations online and starting in that way is not the same thing. It contributes. So, but I think we have invested a lot of time and effort in building a culture where we try to really promote an openness. So we have a good starting point, but still, it's a tough period.
Because I also know that through, congratulations. The company, at least the main company, has been there since 1992, and that's amazing, and flourishing. And I'm just thinking, because the emphasis on the culture has always been there, and I know that you've been very sort of innovative and also in a sense, disrupting even when it's been going really well. And that in 2016 was when you also did a new shift on initiating a project called Get the Story Right. In 2016. Is that sort of a foundation of what you're talking about now? Is the transparency, the leadership? We did a big shift. We started that journey in the end of 15, and we did a transformation, the hard work, 16 and 17, and 18 was the first year in sort of a new structure where we pretty much moved to a self-organized organization. That's a big word, self-organized, because you still is so often it's misunderstood. Self-organized doesn't mean no structures. It means other type of structures, but what we're striving to do is to have all people being in their strength, but having at the same time all the efforts aligned to the same goal. Sounds simple, but it's not that simple. So we have had good years, but also quite challenging year because we have been in another structure for 15 years, more. No, like 25 years. Sorry, 25 years. So with more like a hierarchical structure of the company and moving to something different. That's a big journey.
But of course, it's helped us to be very adaptive now. The last 2 weeks has been amazing. We actually reorganized the whole company, and we're like 80 people in the company, in in 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So we went from some constellations to like 12 new groups, new structures of information and communication, and new type of goal setting, and a lot of stuff in just a few days. I would say that we are an example of a really adaptive organization. Not saying that we have solved all the problems. I mean, we have a lot to do, more to do. So.
Would you just like to share, because I'm sure a lot of people viewing are either leading or founding companies. What are sort of the 4 specifics to think about to become that adaptable company?
I think the most important is that you have a management or a board or ownership that really believes in that there is a better way to run companies, organizations. Because if you don't have the C-level and the board or the owners on board, it's tough. You can start to get more agile in the projects and so on, but you won't really get an agile organization or an adaptive organization. So that's important. But I think the major shift is to move away from that it's only profit that matters. And before we have had some fantasy about that health and well-being and profit are actually not possible to combine. I mean, health will cost. No, it won't. It will generate. So what I think is a good approach is to think that we must create value for all our major stakeholders. So in our company we have 5 stakeholders. So we have the employees, of course. We have the clients, of course. We have the shareholders as well. We have our partners, but we also have the society or the planet we have borrowed from our kids. So we have 5 stakeholders, and they are as important, equally important. And then we try to put every effort around our clients, of course, but in every project we try to create value for all the stakeholders. So that's a big theme. After that, it comes to have a much clearer strategy. In large companies and even small companies, the strategy is so complicated, so no one knows what to do about it. So it's a huge amount of PowerPoints and slide decks, and it's core values, and it's so much. And if you want to go self-organized, you need to have a crystal clear direction so everybody can align with the strategy. Also easy to say, not that easy to do. And then, of course, you have to build a culture where we show up. Some important part at least.
And speaking of culture, because it's also something that one talks about and has for continuous years, and the importance of building a culture. How would you? What is the essence of building a culture? Is it based on some base it on a mission statement, some base it on it's actually for the people, for the. What would you say is culture?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and often the question are put exactly that way. What is culture, and what is the main ingredients in the culture? And that's exactly why so many companies are missing the target, because the culture is a mix of different things. The culture is a sum of our behaviors, of course. It's our values, it's our beliefs, it's our fears, it's our everything that's collective we have in a company. But that comes from something. Where does that come from? That comes from individual behaviors, individual fears and beliefs, and so on. And our individual beliefs and values, they actually have a strong connection to what we're doing. And on the collective level, we also have our structures, organizational schemes, we have incentive systems, and we have premises and the workplace and the digital workplace and everything. So the culture is a mix of everything. So everything affects everything. So you need to, if you want to build a culture, you need to both address the collective that you can see, structures and offices, and you need to address what we can't see, our beliefs and our stories, the stories we are sharing. And we also need to do work with individuals to land in ourselves and to actually do the right thing. So that's why culture is such a complicated area to address, because you need to look at it holistically. So that was maybe a complicated answer on a short question, but yeah.
I think it was a brilliant answer, because that's sort of the palette that I want to color, because a lot of the times we talk a lot, sustainability, culture, leadership, and we don't really, it's still in the doing and not in the being. And therefore I think culture is probably something that's going to be very reflected upon in a time like this, which I presume that you definitely have experience of. And I also get the feeling that the way that you structured your company, which of course come from your values and your ethics and your own internal culture, is probably trailblazing how the companies that will transition and survive, but also trailblazing for companies who can, really adapt to the new paradigm. How do you, today we can't know because everything is uncertain and changeable, but how do you assume, presume, or hope that society or the systemic change will look like for companies going forward? What will it be to be part of a company?
In the longer run, you mean, or what?
Yeah, after sort of this fundamental crisis, where we can't. It's business as unusual, and we're not going to back to business as usual.
I don't think we're going to go back to business as usual. I don't think that, but I think we will come back to something that's not super far away from where we were before. I think this type of processes are very slow. And cultures and societies are slow evolving, but evolving all the time. What I think maybe is something that will accelerate change is actually what's happening now with people working from home, because that's a big thing. In Sweden, we have been able to work from home in many companies for a long time, and it's not that dramatic. When we go outside Sweden, we just need to go to our fellow countries around us. It's a totally other story. So you need to put in different formulas and sign in if you want to work home and so on. And now we have a whole world that's been shifting to we have to work from home. So, and the major hinder to that it hasn't happened earlier is trust. We haven't trusted people, because do you work when you're home or just sitting home and watching Netflix? I don't know. I'm your boss. I don't see what you're doing. So that's my belief as a legacy manager. Now we have time to try this out. So we'll see. Oh, this is actually working in some way. It's problems also, but it's working. So I think that maybe will accelerate the change on our view on the workplace. So the workplace has been very much the office. And when we come to office, there's a nice reception, there's good coffee and so on. But now maybe it's more a blend. I mean, the digital workplace will probably be the first office. And it's already that, because we start working in the morning, we take up our phone and we watch our email, check our email or whatever. That's we enter the digital office, and then we come to our physical office. But we also will see a blend of home working, public working, co-working, so on. So I think the strategies in the company will change, and I think this crisis will accelerate that shift. And that's actually a good thing, because then we share our resources. So actually it's stupid to have so much office space and so much areas that we use so seldom. I mean, I think the general figure of how much we use in the office is 40%. So I mean, 60% is empty all the time.
I know. Yeah.
That's so that's not sustainable in the long run. So that's I don't know if it was answer for a question, but
No,
it's a reflection.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I also think it gives an opportunity. What I've also seen a lot is this openness and willingness and innovation and creativity and collaboration, what we've been talking about. But before collaboration, people have still been in their silos, but now cross-industry, and we're cross-pollinating our skill sets and so forth. So that's a positive.
Yeah.
And I also like that you mentioned trust, because I think trust, responsibility, and resilience are these traits that we're now going to have to cultivate more, because it is about us also taking responsibility, and I think leaders is not the one who's maybe supervising that things are getting done. We take that responsibility. But how do you find that leadership, or the role of a leader, you might find a new word for it soon, is changing, transitioning, or totally, disrupting?
Leadership is like culture. It's a huge topic. But and I also think that we may spend too much time trying to figure out what is the right type of leadership, and what is the leadership working now, and so on. Because I think what we learn when we deep into leadership is that different situation and different people, different groups need different leadership. So all groups are moving into different phases, and it's generic. It happens the same all the time. And depending on where the group are, a different type of leadership is needed. So I really would more like to talk about leadership agility. So agility in what type of leadership is appropriate at that time. And sometimes you really need an instructive leadership when you have a group that's come together for the first time, and you can't start with the question, what should we do now? And people will be totally confused. So then you have one type of leadership. When you have a group that's interconnected, and we all know what we can achieve together, and the trust is totally, and I can fail, and I can cry, and I can do anything. Then it's not a type of leadership. So I think, and leadership, the link to awareness is that leadership agility, if you want to get in contact with leadership agility for real, then you need to be in contact with yourself. So that's the way it's connected. So that's why it's so important with leaders working with themselves, because then when I contact with themselves, they also can connect with people and groups and companies, organizations, even the streams and the things we can feel in the society.
Yeah, and that's a lot of the reason why I also wanted to do this podcast, because it's so and why the leap, it's the leap of transformation, or the leap into self-leadership, the leap within to then go without. So as I know you have experience of that, can you just more in your words to sort of, because sometimes I think people, it's difficult to relate. What has it given you to go through personal growth, self-exploration, and become more aligned with yourself, and then take that out when in your leadership role?
I mean, it's always hard to say what comes first, but I think we are born with some parts of us is given. I mean, we have a certain amount of energy. We have a set of values from where we are raised and born and raised, and so on. But I think all of us are maturing, but we are doing it in a different way. And sometimes along the road, we most of us come to a point where we starting to question everything. What's the meaning with everything, and who am I, and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and so on. And for me, that started to happen when I was like 35, and I had a few years pondering over that, and then I attended my first meditation course, and that was a big moment. I thought I know it all, which I didn't, of course. So that's where it started for 15 years ago, and when I sort of met myself or met maybe a few new perspectives on life, I really wanted to have all of the people working with me having the same opportunity to get in contact with that. So I started to put in small stuff in our companies and trying meditation and small stuff from the start, and then we escalated it and had all our leaders do mindfulness-based leadership training and after that we built it into the structures and to the systems and so on. So but I think I came to a point where I felt a huge lack of meaning, and that's what started the journey for me. And then I traveled all the world and done a lot of meditation and some crazy stuff to explore. And now it's more like life gives us so much challenges anyway. So if we just can show up for that challenges, we probably have enough. So I think it could be a danger to have a sort of, if I need to go away on a course to keep on evolving, that could be good, and it's always good to do stuff. But the main practice must be to live in this world and to take out whatever I have and see how I can give it to others. So.
It's this process of also integrating.
Yeah.
A lot of the time we go through the journey, but then we don't really integrate it. But it's interesting that you mentioned sort of your own existential crisis, because I find that it seems like it's innately what every human will come to at some point, and it's usually a pivotal moment. And I think where we are now, it's probably like a global behavioral change that also maybe ignites this existential crisis. What is the meaning of life? And we're now forced into this stillness, which is part of the journey of what you were saying with meditation, coming closer to really finding our authentic selves. And I also presume when you're a leader, a founder, I mean, you run 4 different companies, as much as we want to be authentic, it is also a role where we take on the role of what society has told us. You have to be responsible, you have to take all the weight and lead people. How do you find now, where we are now, you as an individual? I mean, you're both there as a leader for others, containing their fear. How do you process that when you come home and you're sort of Torbjörn, the man, the father, the husband, the person?
Well, I think actually the way I try to handle it is to actually be as close as possible to observing my own thoughts. And when I'm not in my best shape, I can go through some pretty rough period and being maybe harsh or maybe hard in my tone happens, and I realize it afterwards, and that's natural. But if I'm a little bit closer to myself, I will catch myself in it, and if I even more centered, I will catch the impulse before it. And if I'm really centered, there's no impulse, because then I'm just there. So I try to be aware of my thoughts, and just to catch judging thoughts and negative thoughts, and it's a good start.
I'm also thinking maybe just to challenge a bit, because I think that sometimes people can presume, I'm trying to be the voice of the audience, that okay, so you're center, that means, you know, everything is under control, and it's not really about that. It's about surrendering and actually, you know, learning to how to respond to something. But what about when you feel frustration and anger, and how do we allow ourselves to, you know, transmute that into something else, and yet not, you know, lash out or mirror to someone else or project?
I think that's very individual. I don't think there's a recipe for all. For me, it's sort of balancing the mental game and the physical game and the social game. So for me it's like three parts that must be connected. So it's not enough to just do mindfulness and do mindfulness practices. You also need to work with your body, because we are shaped to get sweaty. So I think a combination of pretty hard training, which I do pretty much interval, hard, short training, and that's my way to flap my wings, and that in combination with mindfulness practice and meditation, and also be sure to have people that can kill you. And when I say kill, I don't mean kill you as literally. I mean more like people that can actually reflect what they see in a very, very honest way, in a super honest way. And the combination of that, I would say, is at least is my way to do it.
And I know, because I also know that your company was awarded. I mean, you have so many awards, but this, I think, was the best in building health 2020, and that's now.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that journey, and also I just wanted to, because you mentioned that you let your leaders do this mindfulness leadership program. What is the biggest shift that you would see in how they would manage their leadership, or when would these sort of tools rise to the surface that they, in general? That was two questions in one.
Yeah. I would say what happened in the first place was that we had a much more even warmer culture. That was starting from a good point. So it was a good culture already, but we had a more open and even warmer culture, and I would say that also affected the leadership culture in a way. When you have my profile, it's also easy to just see what's next and what could be better, because I don't think we really managed to, in the first place, connect mindfulness practices and all these topics about awareness actually with leadership behaviors. So it was almost that we developed our leaders personally, but they didn't find the tools to use it practical day to day. So that took us a while to figure that out, how to do that. And now we are a little bit longer in that.
Could you exemplify what, like an example of what maybe one or two of those could be, the awareness and sort of the mindfulness into a leadership scenario?
What does it mean? I would say when it comes to leadership, what you want to do, what you really want to do, is to connect with the individual, the group's motivation. Because when you find the motivation, when you can connect with that, you also get all the results. And to find the motivation, you need to find the needs behind the motivation. So we all do. There's a good reason for doing everything we're doing, even bad stuff. I mean, if I hit you, that's a bad, terrible thing to do, and I should go to jail. So it's no right with the action. But if I do it, I'd probably do it from some good reason. I want to protect myself, or I'm scared, or something. That's a good reason behind the action. So a leadership that comes from a center point can actually connect with the needs of everybody in the person. Then we find the motivation, and then we have the results. And you don't do that if you can't connect with yourself.
Yeah.
So that's the way it's. So people want to contribute, but they want to contribute from their own will. If they don't do it from their own will, they do just as they're told,
yeah.
And that's a conflict. That's a tension of that, or just you revolt or you comply, and that's not motivation. That's something else. So to come in contact with people's needs. That's
so basic,
yeah.
and yet so fundamental.
Yeah, and it's not that easy.
No, and sort of it's maybe self-reflective. If you don't, many times we might not know our own needs.
Yeah.
Because we're always in the doing
Yeah.
of finding everybody else's needs. So that's also, that cyclical turning that start within the needs, and then you also understand and can convey to others.
And that's really important, because if you want to lead in that way, you need to be in contact with your own needs and the people you lead needs, and that's a tough challenge.
Yeah, same with emotions. Allowed to be. Do you allow yourself to be vulnerable in this? I mean, now where you also are now in the leadership, transparent, vulnerable. Because I know that you do.
Yeah.
So it's really important question. It's not easy if you.
It's not easy. That's a tricky question, because I have absolutely or almost no secrets, so I have no problem to be totally open with shortcomings and failures and stuff. But to be vulnerable is actually something even bigger, because real vulnerability is when I really see that we are linked together, and not just saying it, living it. So I would say my next step in my journey is to get even more in contact with that, and that's not linked to the vulnerability we are talking about, to show up who we are. It's even deeper in that, to realize that that you and I, we are the same. We are connected, and that's a huge. There's huge wisdom in that. I'm want to touch.
And because that's when we sort of, like, we're interconnected, and with that there's more compassion and empathy, and maybe that's what's happening right now. With we're more in isolation now, we have more time to think, even though there's human suffering going on. So
I'm exploring that. I mean, and I try and I fail, and I try and I fail. I mean, it's not that complicated. I mean, if you have a quarrel in your family with your spouse or something, and you both are in a reaction, and you have a fight, I mean, both parties know that it's so easy to get it resolved. If one of us just get, let's start over. Here's a big warm hug. I don't want to hug. I'm gonna stay here until we can land in that. So, and that's so hard to do for me as well. So, and that's the same in business, to be in contact with that it is hard sometimes, and be in contact with that.
And maybe now that's a muscle we're going to train even more, because now we are working more from home. There's a challenge of also being sometimes more, because many times we're fulfilled by contributing, by going to work. And some of my guests have also talked about, it's a bit, there's a contradiction that I love being at home, but I also feel that my fulfillment was going to work, and now you're there with your family, your kids, or alone. And that sort of gives new parameters of how we interact. Have you found that challenging so far?
I think what's on my mind right now is, and I hear it from all the employees in our companies and from our clients, I think we are heading in wrong direction with all these screens and computers and phones and everything. We had too much of that before too. And now it's getting even worse. I mean, we have people are booking back-to-back meetings in Teams and Slacks and Zoom and everything, and we don't need to move between the meetings, so we can have meetings actually back-to-back. And we have a screen in front of us all the time. And when we leave the screen, we check up the news, and we keep on feeding our brains with bad news and bad stuff happening. And then we go back to our computer, and then we go back to the TV and watch Netflix. It's going to kill us. So we need to. So that, I'm worried about that. Really worried.
So what's the recipe? We need to move more. We need to introspect more.
I would say you need to get sweaty for 45 minutes at least. 45 minutes 3 to 4 times a week.
Yeah.
You need to leave your phone outside your bedroom.
Yeah, digital detox.
Yes, you need to have the family dinners if you have a family of friends. You need to put the phones away. And yeah, a lot of that stuff. Need to meditate every day. Doesn't have to be so rigorous or so fantastic, but having a practice coming back to just using your breath. So that's a start for me anyway.
And when you want to tap into joy,
yeah,
we need to tap more into joy. We are allowed to tap into joy and happiness, even though we're in a crisis, because that's what it's a yin and the yang.
Yeah.
What do you do then? What's joy?
That's joy. Yeah, I had fantastic the last weeks with my kids. I have a lot of kids.
Yeah, how many?
5.
Whoa! Yeah, all at home now.
No, they are all over the place. Okay. But they are 4, 7, 19, 23, and 25. So it's a full range. Yeah. But and the small kids are home, still home, of course. So what we do is we do small movies.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So short movies, and just now we are doing some fun stuff around alcohol and actually Corona crisis.
Oh, how to wash the hands, how to use the gel on different.
Yeah, and yeah.
Oh, I love that. Just seeing you smile, that is what gives energy and how we come back to who we are.
Yeah.
Torbjörn, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise, and for all the work that you do. And I really see that Tenet and Partners, and not at least your leadership, is, you're going to trailblaze through this and also bring it out the other end and showcase how that is done. So the best of luck going forward, and thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.